And I think what we need more of is compassion, understanding, and empathy. And I also believe it's important to, regardless of uh, whether there is an oppressor or an oppressed, to acknowledge hurt where it exists and in whom it exists. And I think men are hurting overall. So I don't use the word toxic masculinity because I also think it's become enmeshed with identity politics.
Hey friends, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. There's yet another accusation against Blake Lively. This time she's being accused of using the legal process, not to gather relevant facts, but to look for private details that don't really matter to the case. It's known as a fishing expedition. Basically, Blake is trying to collect private information about clients who have worked with Jed Wallace. She wants to see if these people have gone through similar things as she did, so she can try to convince the court that there's a bigger plan behind the scenes. What she claims is a smear campaign against her. Jed Wallace's legal team recently sent a letter to the judge along with emails between lawyers from both sides, and the whole thing is a bit amusing. Wallace might even be removed from the case entirely. Blake has a deadline where she needs to send a short document explaining how Wallace is involved and why the court in New York should have authority over him. But unless she proves something he did happen in New York, her claims might not hold. It seems like the judge is giving her more chances than other people in similar situations, like in Dustin Baldoni's case. He didn't get a fair opportunity to respond, which makes people wonder if the court is being partial. Some believe the Southern District of New York, where this is happening, has a history of being powerful but also has some issues with corruption. Alongside courts in places like LA and Chicago now, about Wallace's deposition scheduled for July 9th. His attorneys say Blake's team wants information that goes too far. They want him to reveal the names of all his clients from 2023 until now. That's a serious request because many of those clients are celebrities or individuals going through private crises. Wallace runs a crisis management service, not medical care, but coordination. He brings together a team to help people deal with addiction, mental health, or other problems so that they can fulfill their commitments in the entertainment industry. He's not a doctor, but more of an organizer. His clients expect full privacy, and naming them would be a huge violation of trust. They don't want to be exposed just because they needed help. Wallace argues that giving up their names has nothing to do with Blake's case. She thinks if she sees a pattern between how other clients were treated, she might prove her point, but there's no proof such a pattern exists. She also believes Wallace was hired to do something bigger, like run a digital smear campaign. But documents suggest he only provided monitoring services, not aggressive tactics. Because of all this, Wallace's attorneys are asking the court to stop Blake from pushing for private details. They believe this kind of personal information should stay confidential, and Blake's reasons for requesting it don't justify the risk of violating that trust. Blake Lively has been aggressively using the legal system to get personal information about people who aren't even directly involved in her case. She's been sending out subpoenas and digging into private lives in a way that's rarely seen. She's targeting everyday people to try and support a theory that doesn't appear to have much evidence. What she's doing seems like an effort to prove a smear campaign that's almost impossible to track. It's troubling how far she's going, and honestly, no one would want to be in the position of those being dragged into this mess. One company that's pushing back is Street Relations. They had a conversation with her legal team on June 16th and then followed up with an email 2 days later. They offered a middle ground. Street agreed to describe their clients in general terms, like actors, filmmakers, and private individuals. They even said they'd explain what kind of services they provided to those clients without naming them. But Blake's side turned this down. Instead, she insisted on getting the exact names, even though she admitted there's no guarantee those names will help her case. That's a major issue. The court generally doesn't allow this kind of broad, unfocused search. You can't just hope something might be useful later. Legal discovery is meant to uncover facts directly related to a claim or defense, not chase vague theories. Street's legal team said the identities of their other clients won't help prove or disprove anything Blake is claiming. They are still willing to testify about their involvement in this case, but they won't give up names of people not involved. They also made the point that even if Blake promised not to misuse the client names, once someone sees a confidential list, it can be hard to forget. That kind of information spreads, especially in tight-knit communities like Hollywood. Even without a media leak, gossip can cause damage. People talk, and once that trust is broken, Street's future work could be affected. They've made a promise to protect their clients, and revealing their names would be a direct violation of that promise. Street's attorneys sent a letter asking the court to stop Blake from forcing them to hand over the names. They even included back-and-forth emails with her team. Blake's lawyers insisted that knowing who Street has worked with might show a pattern or prove a conspiracy, especially since Jed Wallace denies any major role in the digital attacks Blake claims happened. But Street's lawyer responded by saying this case doesn't involve any of those unnamed people, and there's no reason to drag them into it. He argued that no confidentiality label would protect Street's business if Blake continues this aggressive approach. They may need to ask the court for stronger protection. And while Blake's team backed off on a few unrelated topics, they are still pressing for access to private client details, which Street believes is unnecessary and harmful. Blake Lively's legal team recently asked why it matters who else Street Relations has worked with. In response, Street Relations referred them to an earlier answer they had already given. Blake's side also wanted to know who the official representatives of Street Relations are. The team responded that they'll share those names once some ongoing issues specifically related to topics 2, 10, and 13 are resolved. But that wasn't all. Blake's attorneys pointed out that they still hadn't received the initial paperwork known as Rule 26A disclosures from either Street Relations or Mr. Wallace. These documents are required in every federal case and were supposed to be shared early on. Not providing them on time, they argue, is unfair to Blake. In response, Wallace's side promised to get those documents sent within 48 hours. Even if it meant working through the Juneteenth holiday with a final deadline of June 23 RD, at the heart of the disagreement is this: Wallace's attorneys are trying to protect the private details of their clients. They are asking the judge to issue a protective order which would legally prevent them from having to reveal those names. Their argument is that Blake doesn't actually have any evidence to justify asking for that kind of information. She seems to believe, based on her own theory, that other clients of Wallace may have hired him to do similar things to what she believes happened to her, such as managing online attacks, planting false stories, or organizing hidden smear tactics. But here's the issue: her theory isn't even part of her official complaint. It hasn't been introduced in the case in any formal way. She just thinks that by looking at Wallace's other clients, she might find a pattern. This is a risky approach, especially when considering the kind of work Wallace actually does. He's a crisis manager who helps celebrities and other public figures deal with serious personal problems, including addiction or mental health struggles. These are deeply sensitive matters, and clients depend on him for privacy and discretion. Unlike other legal disputes where the information might fall under legal privileges, like attorney-client or work product protections, this case is different. Wallace isn't saying it's privilege under those doctrines. He's simply saying he's bound by confidentiality, and that revealing the client list would violate the trust placed in him. He could potentially be forced by the court to answer. But doing so would expose people completely unrelated to this case. That would turn them into a distraction, or worse, make them a part of a public conversation for no valid reason. It's hard to see how Blake's team can justify pulling in unrelated celebrities just to try to prove a point based on speculation. Even Blake's lawyers admit Wallace has denied any wrongdoing. And because of that denial, they now want to go digging through his entire client history to try and prove otherwise. It's a big leap-hand one that could do more harm than good. The request being made is pretty extreme, and with Judge Lyman involved, it's hard to predict what decision he'll make. Ideally, he should take into account how important it is to keep people's private matters safest, especially if those people reached out for personal help. Some may have been dealing with very sensitive problems and their privacy should be protected. But since the person being asked to hand over this information isn't a medical expert, he doesn't fall under any legal rule that would normally protect patient information still. This whole situation reveals something important, Blake doesn't seem to have real proof to back up her claims. What she does appear to have is a willingness to go to any length to pressure not just the main people involved in the lawsuit, but even those connected to them. It doesn't feel like she's trying to prove anything through solid facts. Instead, it seems like she wants to force someone into giving up confidential names, which could hurt that person's credibility. And future work. Think about it this way. If a journalist was forced to share their anonymous sources, people wouldn't trust them anymore. The same idea applies here. If someone in crisis trusted this man to help and keep their identity secret and then sees that in court their name could be revealed, it would be hard to feel safe working with him in the future. It sends a message that even the most personal things might not stay private, although he's not a doctor. Many of his clients turn to him when they need help with difficult personal situations, like addiction or emotional struggles. His role isn't to treat them directly. Instead, he sets up the support system, he finds the right professionals, builds a care plan, and manages communication between the client, the treatment team, and often the studios or companies that rely on the client. He acts as the go-between, helping everything run smoothly. If Blake manages to get access to his client list, it could destroy the trust he has built. People might decide not to hire him out of fear that their details could be shared in court. One day, that could cause serious harm to his work and reputation. It really looks like her goal isn't just to win the case, but to tear down his business completely. And if she can't find what she's looking for through the usual legal process, she seems willing to hurt his credibility and the privacy of his past clients just to make a point at the end of the day. This feels less about justice and more about damaging someone's career. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, besties. See you next time.